is up? Welcome to the Transparency. Tonight's episode, Scott Peterson. Thank you. Episode 8. Don't know what's going on with YouTube. Crashing. So welcome. Again, episode 8. We're going to kick off to understand a little bit more of just how wild this filing is and all the lies we've been told. Scott Peterson and the Los Angeles Innocence Project used a declaration by an ABC correspondent. And so I'm going to go into that because that starts talking about and highlighting how many people saw Laci Peterson and the police knew about it. They went to the police multiple times, actually. There was not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 15. 15 people. So there's a lot of exhibits in the filing that was put in by the Innocence Project. So this happens to fall under Exhibit 6. And what I'm going to do, his name is George Gudgel from ABC. He is a senior investigative journalist, recently retired as a producer at ABC News. 40 years of experience as an investigative journalist. I want to give a shout out here to George Michael Gudgel. He literally puts on blast Nancy Grace. Listen to this. Of the many murder cases I have covered and investigated in my career, the media coverage of the Laci Peterson disappearance was by far the most intense and disruptive I've ever experienced. You guys, he's done the Oklahoma City bombing, space shuttle disaster. He's done the Malaysia airline flight. I was obsessed with that, by the way. JonBenet Ramsey. I mean, name the high profile case. He's covered it. The concept of the 24-hour cable news cycle was still relatively new in 2002, and there was a great deal of pressure to fill the airtime. As a result, there were many networks, media outlets competing for the quote-unquote breaking news stories. Programs like CNN, Nancy Grace, were airing almost daily coverage of the investigation into Laci's disappearance as it unfolded, with commentary that was not always accurate or supported by any actual evidence. The intensity of the coverage and the public's interest in the case was exacerbated by the advent of the internet, which made it possible to constantly disseminate the inaccurate commentary and false narratives reported by the tabloid media to a vast audience with lightning speed. This is his declaration. So he stated that he has I began investigating the evidence in the case involving the disappearance and murder of Laci Peterson in December of 2002. He was there right after it was announced. He was on scene in Modesto a few days after Laci's disappearance. I coordinated ABC News coverage of the trial and sentencing proceeding. I recall reaching out to the defense investigator, Gary, in May of 2003, not long after Mr. Peterson was arrested, in an effort to obtain reliable information about the case. I was frustrated by the fact that cable news shows were rebroadcasting tabloid reports that were not based on reliable facts or reliable reporting. The email below expresses the frustration I experienced as I was trying to find accurate, reliable information about the investigation into what happened to Laci Peterson. So here this is an exhibit. It's an email from Mike. And he sends it on over to Peterson's private investigator. I'm a producer for ABC News. I'm in charge of making sure everything we report is accurate, both in fact and context. As you can imagine, the Lacey Peterson story has been challenging. It is particularly difficult when the cable shows rebroadcast tabloid reports. Our broadcast producers see all of this and wonder why I can't confirm similar details. I'm not going to even ask. But as Kirk McAllister's investigator, you probably know more about this case and Scott than anyone else. So when you see something that is pure fiction that you want to throw your shoe at the television and feel compelled to set the record straight, please give me a call. There may be a time when you can or at least reveal what isn't true. Please be assured I treat the information with discretion. I am a careful professional. My principles are of far more value than any scoop or any story. You can reach me at this or this. Okay, so he sends that out May 8th of 2003. Like I said, Scott was arrested, I think, April 18th. Mike goes on to say, in my discussion with other journalists who were covering the case in depth at the time of trial, as I was, I learned that most were conflicted about the jury's verdict, given the evidence presented. So he was there. Contrary to what I saw widely and falsely reported by the tabloid media and cable news shows at the time, I saw no direct or forensic or biological evidence supporting Mr. Peterson's guilt presented at the trial. And my own investigation uncovered important leads to other suspects I believe were not adequately pursued. In fact, much of the coverage I saw was incorrect and or misleading. My investigation into Lacey Peterson's disappearance has been fairly steady over the past 21 years, and it continues to this day. Investigative steps I have taken include reaching out to members of law enforcement, family members, witnesses in the area, submitting Public Records Act requests, and conducting hundreds of interviews with witnesses, attorneys, experts, and individuals with background knowledge of the Modesto Police Department, the Stanislaus County District Attorney's Office, and other law enforcement agencies involved in the investigation into who killed Lacey and Connor Peterson. Over the course of my career as an investigative journalist, I have interviewed hundreds of witnesses from a variety of backgrounds. I'm going to skip this part. My own investigation uncovered exculpatory evidence that supports Mr. Peterson's claim that he is innocent, which appears to me was never investigated by law enforcement. Attorneys from the Los Angeles Innocence Project contacted me in July of 2023 and informed me that they were preparing to file a motion for DNA testing on certain items of evidence and a post-conviction discovery motion in an effort to further investigate Scott Peterson's claim of innocence and what may have happened to Lacey and Connor Peterson. They explained that they were investigating recently uncovered evidence that pointed to other possible suspects in the case. I agreed to speak with them regarding some of the information I have uncovered in my own investigation. We agreed I would not reveal the names of any sources who spoke to me off the record and or asked to remain anonymous. That's pretty amazing. I do want to give him props. That's huge he's standing by that. Like, I'm not going to reveal my sources that have asked to remain, anonymous. But anybody, I can still give you what they've said, but I'm just not going to reveal the source. And then anything that I have that I'm able to just give you and the source. So check this out. This is where a lot of stuff came from. Even with, I would love to know, and I actually reached out to Mike I did my first DM Facebook message, and I couldn't tell you how long. Reaching out to see if he could talk on this, or if he was waiting until everything was handled with the courts. I want to hear about his experience in Modesto. He went and lived there basically for 2 years. I want to hear about his experience with the trial. He went and lived there when he was covering it. So a lot of dedication. Anyways, continuing on. I was specifically asked to discuss possible exculpatory evidence my investigation uncovered and issues around the physical items of evidence that could be subjected to DNA testing, including evidence collected from the orange van that was found on fire approximately 1 mile from the Peterson's home on December 25th, 2002. The morning after Lacey Peterson disappeared, and which was the subject of an inadequate vehicle fire investigation, in my opinion. I was also asked to address what I uncovered when I investigated the date of the home of Rudy and Susan Medina being burglarized. So here we go. He starts off first with the burglary. The Medina home was burglarized on December 24th, 2002. My investigation revealed that there were a number of people involved in planned burglaries in the Loma neighborhood around the Christmas holiday in 2002. You guys, it wasn't just during Christmas time that they would do these planned burglaries. This was a thing in Modesto, and it was a thing with what do you call it? These biker gangs. We're going to get into the Hells Angels. We're going to get into another biker gang up in Molongos or something like that. I don't know. I'm not a biker. I'm not a gang member, but we're going to talk about all that. There was coordination among several individuals who were carrying out these burglaries, including scouts, looking for the police, looking for evidence of vacant homes by counting cars and driveways, and looking for things like uncollected mail and or newspapers. My investigation also revealed evidence that there were more than 2 individuals involved in burglarizing the Medina's home, and that it took place over more than 1 day. Evidence I have gathered in the course of my own investigation, combined with evidence gathered during the police investigation, indicates to me that the Medina's home was burglarized on December 24th, 2002, after Mr. Peterson left his home for the day. Number 15 here, really big here, Diane Jackson told police she saw 3 men in a van parked in front of the Medina's home on December 24th at approximately 11:40 a.m. Miss Jackson was not permitted to testify at trial. Remember, this is the person that, because they put a hypnotos uncertified person. Yeah, that's it. Don't lie, Lana. Yes, that's it. There you go. We're going to get into all this crazy shit. But this is Miss Jackson, just to refresh your guys' memory. She's the one that was not able to testify because the cops stuck a not qualified, not certified hypnotos representative. Go ahead, go get that. So here we go. Again, Miss Jackson under hypnotos was for an official interview, and the individual who hypnotized her was not qualified to do so in any official capacity. So her testimony was deemed inadmissible. I interviewed Diane Jackson, and she confirmed to me that she still recalls the events of the day and that all of the statements she provided to police were true and accurate. Because remember, she gave a bunch of statements before she had, with Biggie Smalls hypnotized. So she saw the van parked in front of the Medina's home with 3 men standing around it, and it was around 11:40 a.m. And how she is so like adamant on the 11:40 is because of what she did right after it. He also interviewed a Linda Chiles, who herself was the widow of a Modesto Police Department detective named Nick. Miss Chiles confirmed to me that she reported to the police in December of 2002 that on the morning of December 24th, 2002, she was driving on Covina Avenue and saw a suspicious-looking van parked in front of the Medina's home with 3 men standing around it. When I spoke to her, she informed me that no one from the Modesto Police Department ever contacted her to follow up with her report. I interviewed Susan Medina, who told me she reported to the police that the morning of December 24th, as she and her husband were leaving town for the holiday, they saw a man on a bike coming down their street as they were about to drive away. The man looked out of place and caused Mr. Medina enough concern that he drove around the block to make sure the man had moved along and was not still lurking around his home. Mrs. Medina stated that the police never asked her if she could identify the man that she saw on the bike. Okay. Both Rudy and Susan Medina also told me that the safe that was stolen from their home was far too heavy for one person to carry it alone, and that it would likely require 3 people to lift and move it. Now, I went ahead and did my own deep dive into the Medinas. And I don't know if any of you guys are out there. You guys can email me. If anybody's involved with insurance claims, I have a question for you. I want to know why the Medinas would take out a $50,000 either equity line on their home or some type of a loan that it would reflect the Medinas taking out a $50,000 loan when in fact it was February of 2003 that I got the paperwork for. So they received some type of either equity line or a loan against a mortgage, a second mortgage against the house. But why would it ever show as that in paperwork versus that you collected $50,000 off of your homeowner's insurance policy? So again, please, if anybody's out there and knows that answer, I'm very curious because I found the paperwork that I think is just something's off. Because you would just wait to submit the items, make your list. Here's what they're going to cut you a check for. But I don't see how that would do anything with you filing paperwork to take what would seem like a loan. So anyways, again, that was February 26th of 2003. It was $50,000. So if you think about it, if they got a loan or an equity line for $50,000 in February, they also then would receive $50,000 from a homeowner's insurance policy. That's $100,000. Moving on. So now, based on reports I have reviewed, Stephen Todd himself, who pleaded guilty to committing the Medina burglary, was unclear about the date he burglarized the Medinas. He interviewed Stephen Todd himself, okay? And he was unclear about the date that he burglarized the Medina's home. First, Todd told police in his initial interview upon arrest that he burglarized the home on the morning of December 27th, which is not possible given that the Medinas had returned home a day earlier and reported the burglary to police on December 26th. Then, realizing a December 27th burglary was not possible, Todd changed his story and told police that he committed the burglary in the early morning hours of December 26th. Okay. However, as reported by my colleagues, by the morning of December 26th, there was already heavy. Oh, thank you so much. I have my insurance guy. We're going to handle this. Love you, Jer. I don't know. Oh my God. I cannot believe I didn't think of you right off the bat. Duh. I'll be calling you soon. Okay. Sorry, guys. Now, however, as reported by my colleagues, by the morning of December 26th, there was already heavy media presence. Okay. Making it an unlikely time to commit a burglary on that street. Covina Avenue is a small, intimate street with homes that are relatively close to each other. I have been there. Me, myself, Lana, have been there. Based on my own experience, he says, of being present with other reporters on the street where the Petersons and the Medina's homes are located, it is difficult to believe a burglary of the Medina's home on December 26th would have gone unnoticed. I interviewed Stephen Todd's co-defendant, Donald Glenn Pierce. Now, Donald Glenn Pierce is dead now. So he interviewed him, obviously, before he died in 2019. On numerous occasions, he interviewed Pierce prior to his death. Pierce also pleaded guilty to the Medina burglary. He told police he was awakened by Todd between 6:30 and 7 a.m. on December 26th, who was asking him to help Todd retrieve property from the Medina residence. That would place Todd and Pierce on Covina Avenue at or after 7 a.m. on December 26th. Again, that account is very difficult to believe because video news reports from that morning demonstrate that the news media were recording as early as 7:02 a.m. December 26th, as indicated by the screenshots of Ted Rowland's report below. dude, they were right outside the house. Okay. And so he, shows them this. In my experience, for a news team to be broadcasting live at 7 a.m. from Covina Avenue, they would have had to arrive there an hour or more earlier for that staging in order to set up lights, set up their satellite news vans, and test their cables and microphones for the broadcast. Given the media presence on Covina Avenue on December 26th, it is not plausible, in my opinion, that the burglary occurred on December 26th as Todd and Pierce reported. If Todd and Pierce were able to remove the safe from the Medina's home on the morning of December 26th, as they claim, it does not explain how, when, and by whom the remaining 50 or so items stolen from the Medina's home were removed, which included other large items like a large tool chest, a gardening equipment, among other things. You guys, they had over, just the safe alone, okay, where it had $50,000 like in jewelry. I'm telling you, this was not some isolated hit. Okay. The more plausible scenario, based on my investigation and eyewitness accounts of there being a van parked in front of the Medina's home with 3 men standing around it the morning of December 24th, 2002, is that there were multiple people in and out of the Medina's home beginning on December 24th, including Todd himself, and possibly continuing through the morning of December 26th, if that is in fact when Todd and Pierce moved the safe. Stephen Todd told police that he was with Cliff Cohen on December 24th, 2002, and that he was not on Covina Avenue at all that day, as proof that he did not commit the burglary on that date. Well, in 2015, I interviewed his daughter, and she told me that in December of 2002, she was living in the airport district at 612 Thrasher. This is going to be really, really important here soon. And that she is the sister of Melissa McDaniels, who was the mother of Stephen Todd Jr., Stephen Todd's son. The location of Tesla Talicia's home is directly adjacent to an alley where a van was set on fire early in the morning of December 25th, 2002, addressed below. My investigation uncovered evidence that the police did not investigate Stephen Todd's account about where he went and what he did during the 3-day period when the Medinas were away, because they left at 10:30 in the morning on the 24th and they arrived at like 4 o'clock on December 26th. On October 26, 2015, this is how much time would pass. He was found guilty in 2004. So in 2015, Mike speaks to Detective Stogue of the Modesto Police Department, who led the investigation into the Medina burglary, which was different than the leads for, it should have all kind of been one, but whatever. So, but he was the lead for the burglary. And I specifically asked him about statements he made at a press conference back in January of 2003, just days, after she goes missing, confirming that Todd and Pierce had been cleared of any involvement in Lacey Peterson's disappearance, because that's what he came out and said. When I asked him about what efforts were made to verify Stephen Todd's alibi for December 24th, the day Lacey went missing, Detective Stogue told me they didn't check where Stephen Todd was that day, that he expected Todd would not tell the truth. In quotes, he says, "You expect that kind of stuff from criminals. It's expected." And all these jailhouse snitches and all these other people, meth addicts they will tell themselves lies enough that they will believe it. They truly, truly believe it, end quote. Sick fucks. I asked Detective Stogue if anyone checked the address that Todd provided to the police as part of his alibi, and he told me he did not know. My investigation showed that the address that Todd provided as his alibi had flooded and was uninhabitable, empty. It was nothing. You cannot live there in December of 2002. Sources have told me that Stephen Todd was a daily user of methamphetamine and other drugs. Todd himself admitted during his police interview on January 3rd, 2003, that he was a daily drug user. And according to a sworn declaration I reviewed by an investigator for the defense that was signed in 2015, Todd admitted to him in 2004 that he was so high on meth and crack for 3 days that he didn't remember anything he did, referring to that 3-day period. Based on my review of the evidence and my own independent follow-up investigation, there appears to be no reliable source of information supporting the prosecution's theory that the Medina's home was not burglarized on December 24th and was instead burglarized on December 26th. My investigation uncovered additional evidence supporting Detective Stokes' admission that the Modesto Police Department did not investigate the reliability of Todd's statements to police. For example, Todd told police that on December 25th, he was visiting his kids at a house on Tioga Drive, which is in the airport district, where his kids were living then. My research revealed, however, that the residence Todd was describing was that of his ex-wife, Elizabeth Garcia, located at 1131 Tioga Drive. Well, guess what? Property records associated with that address indicate that Todd's ex-wife and kids no longer live there in December of 2002. Because that area of Modesto had experienced severe flooding and the residence was abandoned, it therefore appears to me that the police never looked into the reliability of quote-unquote Todd's alibi for December 25th, which was false. Woo, daddy. I have reviewed the content of a statement sent to Scott Peterson. So then in 2012 and 2013, Scott Peterson is written in jail, prison. And it's from a guy, Danny Chapman. Chapman apparently stated to Mr. Peterson that he was in custody at the Modesto Security Center together with a person who Mike is identifying as DM, who knew Stephen Todd. The reason that he's referring to them as DM is because the DM reference in Danny Chapman's letter is the same DM whose identity is currently redacted in Mr. Peterson's 2023 habeas petition. So, and then, so here we go. Chapman reported to Scott Peterson that number one, Todd told DM he had been burglarizing homes in the neighborhood where the Petersons and Medinas lived in December of 2002. And two, Todd told DM that when he was committing the burglary, Todd believed Lacey saw him, so he called DM and asked for a ride so he could get everything out of the house before Lacey could call the police. Danny Chapman also informed Mr. Peterson that DM told him that, quote-unquote, Todd and company abducted Lacey, but he did not provide details about when or where or how he knew that information. I was unsuccessful in my attempts to locate Danny Chapman to interview him over several years. He is now deceased. To investigate the reliability of Mr. Chapman's statements to Mr. Peterson, I independently investigated the information he provided by personally contacting DM in 2015. DM confirmed to me that Todd called him from inside the Medina home and asked him to come assist with getting the things he was stealing out of the Medina's home because he needed to do it fast. DM also confirmed that the call from Todd came on the day of Christmas Eve, bitches. DM confirmed that he knew Danny Chapman and asked me how he was doing. In 2019, I exchanged letters with Ralph Guerra when he was in prison. I've tracked him down, by the way. I had heard from several sources that Ralph was a confidential informant and that the person who called the police and reported that Stephen Todd was responsible for the Medina burglaries was basically him. Ralph did not deny these rumors when asked. He didn't deny them. That's wild. That's wild. Based on the information I uncovered in my years-long investigation into the date that Medina's home was burglarized, I have concluded that One, the police never confirmed the truthfulness of Todd and Stephen's alibi for December 24th. I think he was supposed to put Pierce and Todd, by the way, for December 24th to ensure that they were truthful. Two, there is evidence there were multiple burglaries that were carried out. I'm just going to throw this on the record here. The public defenders that represented these two dudes that, signed off on this to take a plea deal, and yeah, we did the burglary. Dude, these defense attorneys are pieces of shit because they knew and would have had to have known that those burglaries weren't on no December 26th, okay? Just throwing that out there. So, love to know more about those defense attorneys. Moving on. There is evidence that there were multiple burglaries that were carried out by several different individuals beginning on December 24th. And there is no credible or reliable evidence supporting the prosecution's claim that the burglary was not committed on December 24th, but was instead committed on December 26th and only on December 26th, as they said that it was like a 3-hour burglary. Now, saddle up, bitches. The orange Cal Trans van in La Loma Park on December 24th, 2002. Here we go. Matt Dalton couldn't find anything to do about this. Listen to what he uncovered. In 2003, I was investigating a report I had come across about a van that had been set on fire in the airport district early Christmas morning, December 25th, 2002, just hours after Lacey Peterson was discovered missing. The van was set on fire while parked in an alley behind the home of Cohen, the daughter, or the aunt of Stephen Todd Jr. I don't know if it's the aunt or the daughter. One of the individuals, so literally this is where this van is found, lit on fire, called in the early morning hours of Christmas. One of the individuals who investigated the fire was Modesto fire investigator Brian Spitolski. Spitolski. How do we say that last name again? It's definitely Spit. Yeah, it's definitely Spit. Isn't that great? Spitolski. Spit. I'm going to call him literally, he's my favorite person. I'm going to tell you why he's my favorite person. He's like, I want nothing to do with I am not the Modesto Police Department. Wait till you see this shit. This guy is awesome. He did a declaration too. Fucking love him. So Mike calls him up and he says, he contacted him in 2015 when I explained to Mr. Spitolski, that I wanted to ask him questions about the burned van he investigated around the time that Lacey Peterson went missing. He stated that he had been waiting over 10 years for someone to come and ask him about that. Like, what? Yeah. Mr. Spitolski explained that the vehicle fire involved an orange 1989 Chevrolet van with a mattress in the back, license plate number, blah, 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 and that his examination of the vehicle concluded that the fire was intentionally set. After I interviewed Mr. Spitolski, it appeared to me there was information missing in the police reports I had obtained. There were no police reports indicating there had been an investigation into the burned van. I showed Mr. Spitolski the reports I had available to me, and he stated that he believed there should be more investigative reports and photographs than what I had shown him. Mr. Spitolski told me that in his examination of the vehicle and its contents, he saw the mattress in the rear passenger area had visible red-brown staining on a portion that was unburned. He recalled that a presumptive test using luminol or something similar was conducted on a cutting from the stained area of the mattress, and it showed to be presumptive positive for the presence of blood. Boom. Boom with the right hand. Damn, all those haters out there. Look at this fire. Look at this firefighter coming to the rescue. Boom. Not so fast. he stated that he was not aware that Lacey Peterson was missing at the time he responded to the fire that morning. But by the time the van was taken into police custody to be examined for evidence, he and all of law enforcement were well aware of a possible connection. Not just like we have this van. It was we were well aware of a possible connection between the van and Lacey Peterson's disappearance. Look at these bastards. Mr. Spedalski expressed that given the proximity, both in terms of time and location of the discovery of the van with Lacey Peterson's disappearance, coupled with the fact the fire was intentionally set, perhaps for the purpose of covering up a crime, he was concerned and bothered by the failure to fully investigate its potential link to her disappearance. I noticed a reference in one of his police reports to quote unquote 6 color photos that were reportedly checked into MPD evidence. So I began making efforts to obtain those photos. I contacted some of my sources in law enforcement, asking if anyone could help me obtain those photos and other information about this orange van. In late 2015 or early 2016, a source who asked me, hey, dude, please keep me anonymous. You got it. He's kept his word this whole time. In late 2015 or early 2016, a source who asked to remain anonymous sent me the 6 color photos below. This is the true story on how these photos and that Scott Peterson was even able to obtain this shit is from an ABC independent journalist. Isn't this just wild? These photos, they were buried and hidden. Like when he asked for the report, they didn't come with it. Then he's able to obtain these 6 photos from a source. And then look at, he took a picture of the vial and the cutout and like spraying it. And he's like, yeah, this is your positive test. I later provided a copy of these photos to a member of Mr. Peterson's legal team because I was having medical issues. This is when he didn't know how he was like, God, what if I don't make it? And like these have to get turned over. And so I wanted to ensure that the information I had was known to the defense and could be made part of the record so it would be complete. When I was investigating the orange van in 2003, I learned that the registered owner of the van was Terry Borden. Now, you guys, I did my research now on Terry Borden. Terry Borden is dead, but you're never going to believe this. Terry Borden, better known to us as Noel Terry Borden, born in 1943, Kokomo, motherfucking Indiana. You gotta be kidding me. He was born in Kokomo, Indiana. He's from Kokomo, Indiana. They then moved to Modesto, and I'm trying to get clarification on when he moved, and I have a lot more with it, but we're going to come back to it. But yes, Noel Terry Borden. He died in 2016. But wait till you find out what Terry Borden had going on. Here we go. So I took Mike's work and I compounded on it. That's why I wanted to reach out to him. I've added to his work. I've gotten some crazy connections to Kokomo, Indiana, and then to Oklahoma. So I wanted him to know that his hard work wasn't, it was being expanded. And I wanted to thank him. He doesn't know me from Adam, and I just wanted to thank him for, I couldn't imagine how hard and difficult it must have been for him to do all this stuff because he was going against the grain. But he was doing something that he knew was right because he saw it all himself and was like, dude, something's wrong here. So, okay, Okay. So when again he comes across, so he found out who the registered owner of the van was, Terry Borden. So I contacted him at his property on Service Road and asked to interview him. I was immediately struck by the obvious criminal element present on his property. I recall seeing a number of men and women there with obvious gang tattoos who were employees of Borden's moving and rigging. While I was made to feel unwelcome by several employees on the property, the owner did agree to speak with me. When I asked him about his van that was stolen and set on fire on Christmas in 2002, Borden indicated that it was an inside job, meaning that one of his own employees had stolen the vehicle. This struck me as significant in that if the van was taken by one of Borden's own employees, the logical reason for setting the van on fire would be to destroy evidence in order to cover up a crime. It was used in the commission of, since if the evidence inside it were to be discovered, it could easily be linked back to one of the employees, right? Exactly. I later learned that a man named Phil Lout, L-O-U-T, looked him up. All these guys got bikes, chaps, and yeah. He was part of the criminal network associated with burglaries in the Loma, including Todd and others I suspected may have been involved in the Medina burglary. I learned that Lout was the son-in-law of Terry Borden. I attempted to interview Lout, but was unable to do so. He was in prison in Oklahoma. Renfro, all of them just fled to Oklahoma, right? Lout is now deceased. He is. He's got family, though. He's got brothers. In 2017, after learning more about the orange van that was intentionally set on fire in the airport district on December 25th, 2002, and reviewing a police report documenting an interview with Mike Chavada, who told police on December 26th, 2002, that 2 days earlier, on the morning of December 24th, 2002, he was out running in the East Loma Park and recalled seeing an orange Caltrans Blazer-type vehicle parked near the tennis courts. So I contacted Mr. Chavada and interviewed him. I asked Mr. Chavada if he recalled reporting that he had seen as 15-year-old orange Blazer-type vehicle with square headlights that resembled an old Caltrans vehicle in Loma Park that morning. Mr. Chavada immediately said, "Oh, that creepy van. That gave me bad vibes." He did not describe the vehicle as a Blazer, but instead as a van. He said that there were 3 men that he described as gangbangers around the van. When recalling the van, he displayed a physical reaction to the memory of the van, unconsciously mimicking both fear and shock. I found his reaction to the memory of the van believable, as he was having a visceral reaction to the memory as it was coming back to him. I asked Mr. Chavada where in the park he saw the van, and he explained that it was near the tennis court on the east end of the park. The map below depicts the location of the van as indicated. Mr. Chavada told me that no one from the police department ever contacted him to follow up on his report about seeing the orange van in the park on December 24, 2002. Based on my experience and the results of my 21-year-long investigation into this case, I am surprised that law enforcement did not do more to invest the evidence recovered from the orange van that was set on fire in the airport district of Modesto the morning of December 25, 2002, and possible related crimes. In my investigation into that crime, I was unable to uncover any evidence indicating that the Modesto Police Department made a serious effort to make any arrests in that crime, or even find suspects who may have been involved or others with knowledge of the circumstances surrounding that crime. Nor did the police investigate whether the orange van had a possible connection to the abduction of Lacey Peterson. and or in any other crimes. In my view, the van's links to criminal elements in the community and the timing and circumstances of its discovery in relation to the disappearance of Laci Peterson leave a lot left on the bone, aka a lot of unanswered questions that law enforcement investigators failed to pursue. Now, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we're going to make it very, very clear to people. They want to talk about this dog scent bullshit. Ready? I'm about to blow this out of the water. This dog scent stuff. Everybody, Scott Peterson's guilty type shit. Here we go. Okay. So, dog scent. What does he have for us? I also reviewed police reports detailing the immediate efforts undertaken to locate Laci after she was reported missing, including the use of scent dogs to trail her scent on December 26, 2002. My review of those scent dog reports indicates to me that the scent trail detected by Merlin, that's the bloodhound handled by Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department Reserve Officer Cindy Valentine. Are you kidding me? Remember how I was telling you about how people spell their names? These Cindees and these Sindee. Well, guess what, guys? I was able to find not only Cindy Valentine, whatever, I found Cindy Hyde, who was living in that house where Renfro was living. Yeah, I've been doing some real good digging. Real good digging. Can't even believe it. Over there in the Modesto area, this is how they're naming kids. Cindy. But anyways, Cindy. Hold on one second here. Okay, we're back. We're back at it. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, look at this. Look at this shit. So, this dog, Merlin, bless your heart, Merlin. I'm sure you're not still kicking it, but Merlin went from the Peterson's home in the direction of the area of the airport district, not far from 1406 Tiana, where Todd and Pierce lived, and where they were both arrested. Both admitted to committing the Medina burglary. The trail Merlin followed also ended very close to the homes of other suspects I believe may have been involved in the Medina burglary. I personally walked the route where Cindy Valentine documented her dog Merlin had trailed Laci Peterson's scent. I observed that a few blocks further east from where Merlin was told to stop, she was told to stop. Maybe Merlin's a boy, whatever. Gallows. I'll show you guys. So Gallo. So they had her or the dog stop. Who would ever tell a dog to stop? I observed that a few blocks further east from where Merlin was told to stop trailing is where the burned orange van was located in the alleyway behind Thrasher. Valentine testified that Merlin lost the scent and she stopped the search at the Gallo parking lot. Based on my review of Mr. Peterson's statement to police, he left home the morning of December 24th and drove west to his office. But Merlin did not trail Laci's scent in the direction of that route Mr. Peterson reported taking to go to his warehouse. Instead, the trail went south toward the airport district, that area, toward the area where Todd Pierce and others I suspect were involved in the Medina burglary lived and where the burned orange van was located. Depicted below is a map indicating the route Scott told police he took to his office or warehouse on December 24th. That's in blue. And Lacey's scent trail that Merlin picked up on December 26th is in red. I walked the route indicated in red below and was struck by how, although the trails led to the airport district, law enforcement ignored this evidence, even though it tended to corroborate a connection between the burglary, the burned van, and Lacey Peterson's disappearance. So, over here is Scott's warehouse, okay, Peterson's home. And then the Bloodhound 1226 route is going like this, okay? Burglary suspect residence, burnt van. Get the fuck out of here. Boom! With the left hand. Oh my goodness, it just doesn't get any better over here, does it? Let's give it a little ring. Just getting over here. No one helped Lana. What's up with that pathetic target? I don't know, girl. Get those targets going. I don't even know, girl. But Jessica gifted 5 memberships. Woohoo! She's turning people green. We love it. You guys, look at that. Look at this evidence. Scott Peterson told them the route that he went way before little Merlin went on his little stroll or her stroll. Tisk, tisk, Cindy. It's going to get good. It's going to get good. Now, continuing on. Based on my decades of experience as an investigative journalist and my independent investigation of the facts and evidence in this case, it does not appear that MPD conducted a meaningful investigation into the date of the Medina burglary, whether Stephen Todd saw Lacey Peterson the morning of December 24th after Mr. Peterson left home for the day, or the orange van being possibly connected to the Lacey disappearance and murder. As a result, the jury did not hear any evidence concerning the burnt van, nor did the jury hear that there were possible bloodstains observed on the mattress in the back of the burned van, or that the orange van was observed at the park morning she disappeared, or that the following day an orange van fitting the same description was found on fire at a location not far from where Todd lived, or that Merlin trailed Lacey's scent in the direction of the neighborhood where Todd lived, as well as others I suspect were involved in the Medina burglary, and where the burned orange van was located the morning after Lacey's disappearance. Oh, but there's more? Oh, there's more. This is good. Now, eyewitnesses, or an eyewitness who reported seeing Lacey Peterson and or Mackenzie on December 24th, 2002. This is pretty wow. You guys, the police knew about all of this shit and they buried it. It's been 23 years. Lacey Peterson was abducted right before, obviously, Christmas. So if you wanted to use the year of 2003, it's 2025. 23 years. But I was more interested in seeing how dirty is that area with the cops? How dirty is that area with the prosecuting office? How dirty is that county? And that county is just Norfolk County, man. It's dirty. Let's take a look. I interviewed the following eyewitnesses who reported to the police that they had seen Lacey Peterson walking a dog in the Loma neighborhood the morning of December 24th. Or in some instances, the witness saw only the Peterson's dog without Lacey, but whose reports were not seriously investigated, or in some instances, not investigated at all. In 2013, Leora Garcia reported to me that she saw a tan van pulled over along the curb at La Loma Park entrance, not far from where other eyewitnesses reported seeing Lacey Peterson walking that morning. The van's tires squealed when the van pulled away and the door was shut quickly, leaving a quilted coat or blanket sticking out of the door. Ms. Garcia told me she also saw a dog that fit the description of the Peterson's dog dragging a red leash with no one else around. Leora Garcia struck me as a very reliable witness because she seemed to pay great attention to detail. She was a driving instructor at the time, and she was in a car with a student driver. So her primary duty at the time she observed what she reported was to be surveying the surroundings to ensure her student driver was not heading toward any harm. I found Miss Garcia to be very credible. In 2015, Victoria Pouches also reported to police that she had seen a dog fitting the description of the Peterson's dog when she was jogging in the Loma Park the morning of December 24, 2002. When I interviewed Miss Pouches, I asked her if she was certain it was the Peterson's dog she saw that morning, and she stated that she was certain. I spent several years trying to track down John Brazil, a man who worked for the city parks department and who was in and around the Loma Park almost every day in 2002. He was in Loma Park on December 24th because some kids had asked him to put nets up on the basketball courts on his day off, and he agreed to do it. He reported to the police that he saw a golden lab dragging its leash go by with a woman he thought was pregnant following behind. I was finally able to interview Mr. Brazil by telephone in 2016. I asked him if he believed the woman was Lacey Peterson, and he stated that he knew the Roaches, and specifically knew Lacey and Brent because they were involved in student activities when they were younger. Mr. Brazil told me that the woman he saw with the dog on December 24, 2002 very well could have been Lacey Peterson. In my gut, I believe it was Lacey. In 2013, I interviewed Gene Peteroli, who reported to the police that he had seen Lacey Peterson walking a dog near the park entrance at Edgebrook and La Loma, which is a location I knew was near where other witnesses reported seeing Lacey that morning. Mr. Peterola told me Lacey was having trouble controlling the dog, and she had kind of a scared look on her. When Mr. Peterola saw the news and photo of Lacey reporting that she was missing and that no one had seen her since December 23rd, he went to the police station to report that he had seen her walking her dog the morning of December 24th. He told me the police were not interested in hearing what he had to say, so he left and did not go back. I reviewed an email dated February 2nd, 2003 that Mr. Pedroia's coworker sent to the email address that was set up to help find Lacey Peterson, stating that Mr. Peterola attempted to report what he had seen to the police, but no one seemed interested in hearing it. Mr. Peterola is now deceased. The email is below. Oh my God. Possible sighting Lacey Peterson. I work with a guy that says he's seen her the morning of the disappearance. He lives close to where she lived. He says he's seen her standing by the west side of the park with the dog. It was in the morning. He told me he went to the police station and reported, but no one seemed to take it seriously. If he could show you the spot, he says he's seen her there. Maybe some sort of clue or evidence is still there. His name is Gene. Oh my God. Look at these bastards. Oh. Now, we're going to close out Mike's awesome report, okay, in his declaration here. Remember I've been telling you guys about the DA banging, okay? Well, this is where it comes from. Now, trial prosecutor Bridget Flatiger, and MPD lead detective Craig Grogan. Because Mr. Peterson's trial was moved from Modesto to Redwood City, both trial teams had to try the case away from home. The prosecution team and law enforcement witnesses tended to stay at one hotel, the Marriott Residence Inn, while the defense team, they stayed at another hotel. I was hopeful to establish a relationship with the prosecution and detectives, so I purposely stayed at the Marriott Residence Inn. Over the 6 months I was staying at that hotel, I frequently saw trial prosecutor Bridget Flatiger and detective Craig Grogan together, apart from the others. I noticed interactions between them that appeared to be progressively familiar, such as unnecessary touching and smiling, than what one typically sees among professional colleagues. The interactions I've observed appear to be more and more obvious over time. At some point, I started noticing similar interactions in court. I heard other detectives speculating as to why Grogan was staying at the hotel away from home for months. Later, toward the end of trial, I was told by colleagues that there were rumors they had a romantic relationship. I later confirmed with a person who had personal knowledge of the affair between Bridget Flanagan and Grogan that the two were engaged in an extramarital affair and that some of Detective Grogan's friends and colleagues were actually concerned about how the affair was affecting him personally and emotionally. I have reviewed this declaration in its entirety, and it is accurate to the best of my knowledge. I declare under the penalty of perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and accurate. Take that, you fucking pieces of shit. Hell yeah. Boom. Well, thanks to literally Mike here. Because of Mike, Peterson was able to obtain multiple declarations because of the relationship that I believe that this guy had formed with people that he, had talked with and had talked to all these years, and that they came forward and they filled out declarations. One of them being, I'm going to read you two of them. The most important one I'm going to read, though, is, I think they're all important, but for me, I really, really loved Declaration of MM. I loved this one and the fire inspector. So I'm going to close out with, let's see. I think he has some exhibits here. Let's see if I have some exhibits. Yeah. Oh, well, I think if I go back. Okay, yeah, here. Brian Spitalski. I am currently employed as a principal consultant specializing in fire investigations within Vista Forensics. I have over 20 years of experience in fire investigations. From 1999 to 2003, I was employed with the Modesto Fire Department as a fire investigator. In July of 2023, I was contacted by attorneys with the Los Angeles Innocence Project. They explained that they were investigating a vehicle fire that I had investigated, which occurred around the time of the investigation of the disappearance of Lacey Peterson. I agreed to speak with them regarding what I remembered. Here we go. On December 25th, 2002, I was contacted around 8:30 a.m. regarding a vehicle fire in the airport district of Modesto. At this time, Modesto, and particularly the airport district, was notorious for vehicle thefts and fires. Over the years, I had responded to several fires involving those cocktails. Solva cocktails or fires classified as attempted murders reported in the airport district of Modesto. At the time I responded to the call, I was unaware of the missing person investigation into Lacey Peterson, who had been reported missing the prior evening. When I arrived at the scene, the fire had been extinguished and the vehicle was still lightly smoking. The vehicle was facing south in an alleyway located between Thrasher Avenue and Empire Avenue, north of Larkin Avenue. The fire engine that responded to the scene prior to my arrival approached from the north end of the alleyway. I approached from the south. The blue pin on the map below depicts the vehicle's approximate location. So this is a good look for us. So that's the alleyway behind behind Thrasher. Okay. The vehicle was an orange 1989 Chevrolet van with a license plate. The van is depicted in the photograph below. Looks like the Cleveland Browns, baby. As a fire investigator on the scene, my role was to determine the origin and cause of the fire. I recall consulting with Captain Jolly, who informed me that there were no witnesses around, but that a neighbor had called the fire in. He further informed me that the decision to call in a fire investigator was in part based on the fact that a rag was sticking out of the fuel tank. Although this did not appear to be the origin of the fire, it did tend to indicate that the fire was intentionally set and therefore warranted investigation. I recall speaking with the reporting party who resided at 612 Thrasher Avenue. Ring a bell yet? 612 Thrasher, huh? The reporting party informed me that they did not recognize the van and that they did not recall the van being present in the alleyway when they went to sleep the night before. You know, the night that Santa's coming. Aside from speaking with the reporting party, we did not conduct any further canvass of the neighborhood for witnesses to the fire. This was in part due to the timing of the fire being on Christmas morning, and also due to the location of the fire in the airport district, a neighborhood notorious for crime. Based upon my observations and my experience and expertise, I opined that this was an incendiary fire, meaning it was intentionally set and not the result of a natural causes. I based this conclusion in part on evidence of two separate ignition points and corresponding burnt patterns, one in the front of the vehicle and one in the rear, which indicated that the fire was set in at least two locations in and on the vehicle. I also observed that the gas cap for the fuel tank was lying on the ground near the vehicle and had a rag been placed into the opening for the fuel tank and was hanging down the side of the vehicle, but it was not burnt. It was not burned, and was not the origin point of the fire. Part of my role as a fire investigator was also to determine whether there was any evidence that the vehicle was stolen and stripped of parts before being burned. With the exception of the battery. You guys remember what I told you about those batteries? That other van had 8 batteries. They need to make sure they got that meth van. Got them 8 batteries. Okay. With the exception of the battery, the vehicle had generally not been stripped for parts, typically sold or sought after in vehicle thefts, such as the radio, the wheels, the lug nuts. I also observed driver's side door lock was intact. The driver's side door. I was unable to determine whether the key was present in the ignition. As I recall, the ignition area of the vehicle was severely damaged. Now, in my experience as a fire investigator, when a vehicle is intentionally set on fire, there are a number of typical motivations for doing so, including insurance purposes, or if the vehicle was involved in crime, to dispose of the evidence of that crime. I recall thinking that this vehicle fire appeared to be unusual in that the vehicle had not been stripped for parts. The radio and tires were intact, and the tires, which appeared to be matching and in reasonably good condition, were still on the vehicle. Additionally, our investigation later showed that the owner only had liability insurance on the vehicle, which indicated to me that a possible motivation for this vehicle fire was the disposal of evidence of a crime, not to collect insurance, not for parts. You didn't want it. Basically, we need to destroy evidence. As a part of my investigation into this vehicle fire, as indicated in my report, I produced photographs, scene diagrams, and a report. I recall producing a scene diagram in this case, which depicted the location of the van, its orientation in the alleyway, and other objects within the alleyway. Typically, I would take my own scene photographs. Attached to my report are 2 sheets of thumbnails of digital photographs I took at the scene. It was my practice to upload photographs to the department's database for storage. This case occurred around the department's transition from film photography to digital photography. During this transition, it was common for both digital and film photography or photographs to be taken at a scene. I do not recall whether any film photographs of this scene were taken in addition to the digital photographs attached as the thumbnails to my report. I recall that while on the scene, I requested the assistance of a CSO, or a community service officer, to assist with processing the scene, but was informed that none were available at the time. Subsequently, I made the determination to have the vehicle towed to a secure location for processing at a later date. I recall that as part of my initial examination of the scene, I examined the interior of the van. I recall observing a burnt mattress in the rear of the van at this time. Situated on the mattress was a large metal can. I do not recall moving the metal canister located on top of the mattress at this time. Below is a photograph depicting the interior of the van. Look at that. While at the scene, I wore my work gloves while handling any evidence. I do not recall collecting any evidence on December 25th, 2002. Instead, to my best recollection, items such as the rag hanging from the fuel tank were secured inside the van while it was being towed to A&R Towing. I recall that we picked this specific tow yard because it was fenced in and under surveillance in order to protect the integrity of the vehicle, which was still under investigation. My initial report lists an individual named Mark Frings as a name to appear in the report, but his name is not mentioned in the body of the report. I do not recall who this individual was or what was his connection to this case. Again, my initial report lists an individual named Mark Frings as a name to appear in the report. Within a couple of days, I became aware of the missing persons investigation of Lacey Peterson. I became aware that police were looking for information regarding a van associated with a burglary that occurred across the street from the Peterson's home around the time Lacey Peterson was reported missing. See how that was internal, guys? This was internal. This whole everything to do with what he's saying right there, that wasn't brought out to the public, but that was internal. Okay. Like how like the white Elantra was internal at first. Be on the lookout for a white Elantra to other law enforcement agencies. We, the public, didn't get that for a long time, right? Right. Oh, thank you. Now, when I heard this, I immediately thought about the van fire I had investigated on December 25th. I contacted Modesto Police Department, Detective Shipley, to conduct further investigation. Interview with owner Terry Borden. Look at Terry, Border. He had to fix that to an N. On December 31st, 2002, I accompanied Detective Shipley to the business property of Terry Borden, the registered owner of the van. I recall there being several people present during the interview. Initially, upon our arrival, I recall the people there knew we were law enforcement and did not want to talk to us. This was on December 31st, you guys. December 31st. I remember the Borden property being an intimidating place, says the fire. Like, this is the fire dude. I recall there being several men hanging out around the property, and Detective Shipley informed me of the criminal history of some of the people associated with the property. I do not recall whether or how they identified themselves. I did not get the impression that they were all members of Borden's family. They also did not strike me as official employees, but instead just sort of men that were hanging out around the compound. I recalled that while Detective Shipley was interviewing the owner, I was accompanied by another individual who showed me where the van should have been parked. I recall trying to determine how the vehicle could have been stolen from the property and thinking that someone would have to be an idiot to try to steal from the Borden property. I recall there being dogs on chains, and it was just all around an intimidating place. I recall Terry Borden indicating that he was not aware of a mattress being in the back of the van when it was last in his possession. Detective Shipley took the lead on taking witness statements. While I am aware that his report indicates that he conducted a search of an individual and his residence, I do not believe I was present for that search. Discovery of stains on mattress. On December 31st, 2002, after interviewing the owner and obtaining a warrant to search the van, I accompanied Detective Shipley to the tow yard where the van had been stored. Modesto Police Department evidence technician Lavelle, we have another Lavelle, love spreadsheet, might have also been present at the tow yard, but I do not specifically recall. To the best of my recollection, while at the tow yard, I entered the vehicle, removed the metal canister from the mattress, and discovered that there were red-brown stains on the unburnt portion of the mattress. I recall feeling a sense of anxiety at seeing the stain, and I still get goosebumps now when I think about it. At this point, the search for Lacey Peterson was at the forefront of everyone's minds, and discovering these stains in this burnt van, found within hours of her disappearance, was shocking. The stained mattress and metal canister are depicted below. Jesus. That's a lot of blood. Upon observing the stains, we decided to have the vehicle brought to the Modesto Police Department evidence and property locker for further processing. Dude, this would never made, nobody knew about this. This was going on December 31st. This is crazy. These people are sick. These cops can all kiss our asses. Because the search, this is transporting and processing the van at the evidence locker. Because the search for Lacey Peterson was national news at this point, and because the police had released a statement indicating they were looking for a van related to a burglary across the street, we took extra precautions to avoid having the van spotted by the media while en route to the evidence locker. We covered the van with a tarp during transport and drove a route that avoided the media that was staking out outside the police department as indicated by the map below, and put the van in a warehouse with a closed door for further processing. So, once at the evidence locker, I began processing the van. This was a more thorough processing than what had occurred at the tow yard. I recall digging out the floorboards of the van and removing the mattress materials. I believe some portions of the van were examined for fingerprint evidence, but none were located. I recall additional photographs of the processing of the van were taken at the evidence locker. I would have been taking my own photographs, and I recall some from MPD taking photographs as well. Where are they? I recall cutting 3 samples from the mattress fabric. To the best of my recollection, the portions I collected consisted of 2 small cuttings of stained areas and 1 control cutting of a non-stained area. I believe the stained samples I cut are the 2 small holes cut from the middle, and the control sample I cut from the edge of the fabric, as indicated by the circle, yellow circles in the photographs below. So, one's there, one's there. And then on the outside over here was the controlled. I did not take the photo depicted above. The attorneys I spoke to from the Los Angeles Innocence Project informed me that the photograph above was taken in 2019 in conjunction with testing that was conducted at the time, and that the letters A and B that are superimposed on the photo were placed onto the photo to indicate the areas where samples were collected for DNA testing in 2019. I believe separate photographs of the process of my cutting of samples from the mattress cloth in 2003 would also have been taken. Like, he's basically saying, you guys are missing these 6 fucking pictures. There's more than that. To my recollection, I selected the stained samples from 2 areas where the staining appeared to be the heaviest. Of the 2, I deliberately chose the heavier stained sample to be subjected to a presumptive test for blood to give the best chance of indicating whether blood was present. This sample was placed into a vial for presumptive testing. The vial turned blue, indicating a positive reaction for blood. The vial and the positive reaction of the presumptive test are depicted below. Oh, shit, daddy. Oh, shit. Oh, my God. This is wild shit. Scott Peterson's going to be a free man. I hate to say, but I told y'all since I started this channel, whenever I talk about the Scott Peterson case, I said, first of all, I told you guys to go get the presumed guilty book. Read it. It's fucking amazing. And I said, it's coming from somebody that was on his team, and it's a lawyer who wrote it. And I just don't think that you're going to fuck up your whole entire career to write that book. But wow, this is just amazing, you know? The LA Innocence Project just literally upending Bridget's career in all these motherfucking cops' career. I absolutely am here for it. I love it. This is amazing. All you fucking haters out there, kiss my fucking ass. No, because it was all lies about all this. There was no blood on that mattress. It didn't test positive for blood, blah, blah, blah. Liars. Boom daddy. Wow. Now, I am not sure what happened to the second sample cutting and the controlled cutting that I collected. It is my practice to wear gloves when entering a crime scene, including a burnt vehicle. And to the best of my recollection, myself and others processing that van wore gloves when we entered the vehicle and handled the evidence therein. I recall that once the presumptive test indicated positive for blood, the face of the evidence technician conducting the test went white, and everyone present at that evidence locker went ballistic. The people observing the testing started getting into their phones to report what we had just found. This was such a big deal that the police chief, city manager, and fire chief all came down to the evidence locker to view the fucking evidence. Are you kidding me? Dude, they acted like nothing was there. We didn't ever hear anything about this, you know, as it's happening, that they uncovered this. This didn't come in trial. They said there was no nexus, no nothing, no. They didn't even say there was a van that caught on fire. Nobody knew about this shit. At this point, the incendiary fire had morphed into a missing person case, and control over the case and its investigation were taken over by the Modesto Police Department. DOJ lab. Now, this is going to blow everybody's mind. I recall personally taking the stained mattress fabric to be tested at the DOJ lab in Ripon. I recalled that typically this lab was very busy. When we would submit evidence to test for the presence of an accelerant in an arson case, we would sometimes have to wait over a year for results. I specifically recall taking the samples and handing them over to a woman that worked at the lab who was also a volunteer firefighter in Ripon. I have reviewed the handwritten submission forms associated with this transaction. My name is erroneously spelled, and the form incorrectly states that I was with the Modesto Police Department. These forms also incorrectly indicate that the sample was tested in front of me with a negative result for blood. Oh my God, this is where it can. Do you understand? He is outing where now all of this false information came from. Holy shit. Oh God damn. They fudged the papers. Oh my God. You guys, who would ever cover, okay, for peepee little meth tweakers? Nobody. Now, who would cover for big wigs in the area that run that town? That's who the po-po working for on all those side cuts, all those envelopes going out, baby. This is not some tweaker fucking incident that happened across the street at Lacey Peterson's, on her street. This is, ooh, daddy. Ooh, daddy. These forms, again, also incorrectly indicate that the sample was tested in front of me with a negative result for blood. I did not witness any testing conducted on that mattress sample while at the DOJ lab. I only dropped the sealed samples off and then left. Conclusion. I left the Modesto Fire Department not long after my involvement in this case. I agreed to talk about my observations and the evidence I collected and examined related to this vehicle fire because I have been deeply troubled about what I have viewed to be an insufficient investigation into the possibility of this vehicle fire being related in some way to the disappearance of Lacey Peterson. In my opinion, given the presumptive positive test for blood on the mattress in the back of the van, which was found the morning after Lacey Peterson's disappearance not far from her home, and which was intentionally set on fire, perhaps to conceal evidence of a crime, a much more in-depth investigation should have been conducted into who was responsible for the theft and burning of that van. I have reviewed this declaration in its entirety, and it is accurate to the best of my knowledge. I declare under the penalty of perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and accurate. 7/26/2023. Welcome to the transparency. Keeping it real. Yeah, fight me. Let's go. This is so crazy. This is so crazy that people are literally in mainstream media losing their minds. They're not going to talk about this. Nancy Grace should never work another day in her life. Okay. This is horrible. Everybody in mainstream media should be talking about this. How are you not talking about this? You have a guy writing a declaration saying that these people at the DOJ lab and the Modesto Police Department fudged paperwork in the results of testing done in the Lacey Peterson case. Are you kidding me? Now, M&M's declaration. And then we are going to wrap it up for episode 8. People hate the truth. And then I'm going to take my call for my jewelry. Got to find out about my jewelry here. I'm going to end out with a bang here. Again, I cannot give enough kudos to Mike from ABC. Dude, shout out to you. All your hard work. I don't think there's anything greater in life than to be a part of freeing an innocent person. And I think that Mike has I think that Scott Peterson's going to get his day in court. He's going to get a fair trial. And if he doesn't, like, something is seriously wrong with the world that we're living in right now. But give it up, because a lot of this stuff, I know that the stuff I'm reading today flowed from Mike's work. So, okay. Closing it out here with I'm going to leave it right. I want to leave this up. Look at that. Look at that, man. Unbelievable. Jeez. Okay. Eminem. I hereby declare under the penalty of perjury that the following is true and accurate to the best of my knowledge. I grew up in the Modesto neighborhood known as the Airport District and lived there until I was about 27 years old. I was married to a man I met in grade school who also lived in the Airport District. We had 3 children together. I filed for a divorce in March of 2003 and left Modesto in the spring of 2003. I took my 3 children with me and moved out to the East Coast. I have lived on the East Coast. Yeah, come on, girl. I have lived on the East Coast since 2003 and currently live in Virginia. I am 47 years old. When I lived in Modesto's Airport District, I lived in a few different houses and knew many of the people from that neighborhood. I knew Stephen Todd. I knew Glenn Pierce. I knew the Tenbrink brothers, Sean, Adam, and Brian. And then we're going to redact a couple names here. And many others who were longtime residents of the Airport District or who frequented the neighborhood. I lived in a house located at, it's in the 300 block of South Santa Cruz, which was very near Tenaya, where Stephen, Todd, and Glenn Pierce lived. They and others from the neighborhood often came by the house to talk and hang out. In January of 2025, I met with the director of the Los Angeles Innocence Project, who showed me some photos of a van and asked me if I had ever seen that van in the Airport District. A photo of the van is attached as Exhibit A. I recognized the orange van because I had seen a number of people driving around in it from the Airport District, including Stephen Todd, another person, Glenn Pierce, and another person. I know from living in the Airport District that many of the residents there use drugs and would regularly commit crimes like burglaries to get things they could sell fast and use the money to buy drugs. The neighborhood burglaries weren't really organized. No one person was in charge. But the men I knew from the Airport District would help each other out when they did do burglaries and split up the goods they were able to steal. I recall that Lacey Peterson was reported missing sometime in late December of 2002 around Christmas time. Shortly after she went missing in late December or January of 2003, I was at the house on Santa Cruz, South Santa Cruz, with several guys from the Airport District, including Blank, Jason Nolan, Blank, and others. I heard a discussion about Stephen Todd casing the house across from the Petersons on Covina Avenue. Blank said that Todd needed help getting a car to get items out of a house. Blank and the others were saying a van was used to get the stuff out of the house during that burglary. I don't know which van was used or whether it was the orange van I had seen Todd driving around in the neighborhood. I heard Blank say that when he and Todd were doing the burglary, a pregnant lady from across the street came over and confronted them. She told them she knew the neighbors weren't home. Blank said that they told her to go home. So, I want to repeat this again. The people that were robbing this house, the Medinas, she was told that they knew that those people were not home. Like I've been saying, inside job. Blank said her dog was barking. It was clear to everyone there that the pregnant lady that they were talking about was Lacey Peterson. It was also clear to me that the burglary happened on December 24th. I was familiar with these men because they frequently came by the house on South Santa Cruz. It was my impression that Todd, blank, and possibly blank all participated in the burglary in some way. I tried to understand more about what happened after they interacted with Lacey, but they were kind of talking in circles, and I wasn't able to learn more, only that they saw her and told her to go home. I have followed the case involving Lacey Peterson's disappearance and Scott Peterson's legal case somewhat over the years. I did not come forward before now because I have friends and loved ones who still live in the airport district. I also was not certain the information I have was helpful or needed. She didn't know that it was. I have reviewed this declaration in its entirety, and it is accurate to the best of my knowledge. I declare under the penalty of perjury pursuant to the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and correct. Boom. Ooh, boy. Now. Boy. Okay, ready? I'm going to put this to rest right here. Leave you guys with a little cliffhanger. The next person that did a declaration was Scott Peterson's Gary Ermonon. He was the private investigator that basically Scott Peterson's family was paying. And he was hired and it was in December because they were trying to find Lacey. So he was hired in December. And yeah. He has a doctorate in criminal justice and criminology and was a general partner and instructor at the California School of Investigation from 2003 to 2019. He wasn't some schluff. My assignments included developing curriculum and instruction in the following courses: administration of justice, private investigation, computer forensic investigations, conducting criminal defense investigations, criminal investigations, and the law, investigations of sex crimes, practical Spanish for law enforcement investigators, surveillance and undercover investigations, vice and narcotics investigations, school campus safety training, and training and strategies for a safe school environment. Prior to becoming a private investigator, I was a deputy sheriff with the Stanlis County Sheriff's Department for 4 years, from 1976 to 1980. He knows what these motherfuckers are all about. In August of 2023, I was contacted by lawyers with the Los Angeles Innocence Project. They informed me that they were investigating the case of the People versus Scott Peterson, which I had been involved with as an investigator. I agreed to speak with them about my involvement with the case. I was asked to provide Mr. Peterson's attorneys with my views and opinions of the investigation of the Modesto Police Department conducted in the disappearance of Lacey, based on my decades of experience as an investigator and law enforcement officer, and my many as a private investigator working on criminal cases in Modesto, and my familiarity with the MPD personnel involved in the investigation in Scott Peterson's case. So I agreed to do so. In late December 2002, I was contacted by attorney Kirk McAllister regarding the missing person investigations into Lacey Peterson's disappearance. Kirk explained that he had been retained by Scott Peterson, Lacey's husband. Kirk wanted me to go with him to meet with Scott and Scott's father so we could understand what was going on and get as much information as possible. I learned that the Modesto Police Department was targeting Scott as their main suspect, accusing him of being responsible for his wife's disappearance and executing search warrants to search for evidence that would show he was guilty. I met with Scott Peterson, and he explained to me that he was concerned about finding his wife and that he had nothing to do with her disappearance. He was worried that because the police were focusing their investigation on him, valuable time was being lost in the search to find his wife and finding out what happened to her. Scott explained that the police were questioning his whereabouts on December 24th. He stated that he had gone to Berkeley Marina and put his fishing boat in the water there sometime around midday on December 24th, and that he had seen a few people there that day who could come forward and confirm that he was telling the truth. Scott stated that Lacey told him she was going to take their dog for a walk the morning of the 24th after he left home for the day, and we discussed the importance of canvassing the neighborhood to try to determine if anyone actually saw her walking the dog. I recall that Scott was assisting in the search for Lacey by working with a community volunteer center that had been set up at the Red Line Inn in downtown Modesto. The volunteer center was receiving calls and tips from the community members who were calling in to report information they believed may be helpful in finding Lacey. Some of the callers were reporting that they had called the Modesto Police Department tip line and left messages, but they were not hearing back from anyone to follow up on their information. Berkeley Marina. Initially, the police were questioning Scott's alibi and claiming that they were unable to confirm he had gone to Berkeley Marina, as he had told them. I was notified that on January 4th, 2003, a City of Berkeley gardener who worked at the Berkeley Marina named Michael Ivesta emailed the tip line the Peterson family had set up and reported that he had seen Scott in his truck and trailer at the marina on December 24th. On January 7th, 2003, I interviewed him, and he told me that he saw Scott at the marina on December 24th, 2002. He identified Scott and his truck from the photographs that were circulating in the media. Mr. Avista recalled that he was driving through the parking area and saw that Scott was having a bit of a trouble trying to back his trailer down the launch ramp. And he had to stop and wait because there wasn't enough room for a vehicle to pass when someone is backing down the launch ramp. This happens all the time where we live. Mr. Avista stated that he reported what he saw to the MPD, Detective Rick Armarandaras. A copy of my memorandum documenting my interview with Mike is attached here too as Exhibit A. On January 7th, I also contacted David Johnson, who told me that he was at the Berkeley Marina on December 24th and saw Scott's Ford pickup. The truck, the trailer, it was parked near the launch ramp. He explained that on Friday, January 3rd, he heard on the news that the Modesto Police Department was looking for people to confirm that they saw him or that his vehicle was there. Mr. Johnson explained that he called the police on Friday, Saturday, and Monday trying to give statements and was finally able to speak to Detective Grogan on the third try. Mr. Johnson said that he was ticked off because the police were not making any effort to talk to the people who lived at the marina to confirm Scott's information that he was there that day. He agreed to compile a list of names of people who were also at the marina and may have information and provided it to me. Check this out. This guy goes, because this was like a marina that you could actually also like live at, like your boat. He goes and he puts all the boats in all the dock areas and then is telling them, each person, the freaking police. The police didn't go and do any of that. Think about this. On January 8th, 2003, Mr. Johnson faxed me the information. I just talked to him on the 7th. Now he's faxing it to me. The information that he was able to gather concerning possible witnesses who may have seen Scott at the marina. I contacted Mr. Johnson again on January 9th to follow up on the information he provided. Mr. Johnson explained that it would be impossible for anyone to conceal a large object in a small, open aluminum boat, such as Mr. Peterson's boat, because after launching the boat, would have to pass by all the dock boats in the area, which were inhabited with residents at the time. A copy of my memorandum documenting my interview with David Johnson and the information he provided to me are attached here as Exhibit B. Now check this out. We're going to show you, I'm going to oh, is it? We're going to come back to Adam, but hold on. It's going to be wild. This stuff is there we go. Okay. That's his CV. His CV is stacked. We'll leave this right here for right now. Hang it tight. Okay. Okay. Let me see what page it is. Exhibit 13. Hold on. Oh, there we go. That's why. It's on the wrong one. There we go. Boom. Okay. Okay. On January 9th, I contacted Dave Casey, who worked at the Berkeley Marina. Mr. Casey stated that he had been repairing boats at that location for over 30 years and that he was there on December 24th. But he did not recall seeing Mr. Peterson. Mr. Casey stated that it was the season to fish for sturgeon and that it was not at all unusual to see boats the size of Scott's in the bay fishing for sturgeon. So that's what he used him for. On January 9th, I contacted Nick Clinton. So he's going on through all of these people. He contacts Mr. Clinton suggested I talk to Yuri Ferreira, who was also on his boat with him that day because Mr. Ferreira was standing in the cockpit while Mr. Clinton was down in the cabin working on the boat engine. So on the 9th, January 9th, he contacts him. And he told me that he was at the marina on December 24th and recalled seeing Scott's truck and boat, which he identified from photographs. He said that he pays attention to boats more closely than vehicles because he works on boats. So he said that that person appeared to not be very experienced because he seemed to be having trouble. He looked at a photo of Scott and said he looked familiar, but he could not say for sure if it was him because he may have been viewed Scott's photos on the internet. But Mr. Farrar said that he did not recall seeing any object inside the aluminum boat except some type of camouflage clothing, like a jacket or pants. Mr. Farrar said that he recalled the brown and green colors. I know from the photos I reviewed that were taken by MPD during the search of Scott's warehouse on December 26th and 27th that the camouflage jacket was found in his boat. There it is. These people could not know this shit on January 9th. Nobody knew anything like this. Okay? Like, these are all credible sightings. Okay? I'm sorry, but you cannot fucking put a goddamn body in that boat. You would tip over. If anybody's ever been boating, shit. Mr. Ferrari, I don't know how he says it, but Mr. F, whatever, stated that he spoke to Detective Owens from the Modesto Police Department, but the only question Detective Owens asked him was whether he saw Lacey Peterson at the marina on December 24th. Saw her. He said that he did not see her at the marina. A copy of my memorandum documenting my interview with him is attached. I remained in contact with him after I interviewed him because I believed his eyewitness account and or testimony could be important if the police were to accuse Mr. Peterson of being involved in the disappearance of his wife. On September 15, 2004, while Mr. Peterson's trial was going on, he contacted me via email stating that he had heard he may be needed to assist in the case. Mr. Farr is not a native English speaker, and his email reflects that. But I understood him to mean that he would make himself available to testify at Mr. Peterson's trial if he was needed. So he's like, I responded to his email to convey that Mr. Peterson's attorney, Mark Garagos, that he was available if needed, and I would get back to him and let him know. Attached here is Exhibit F, are the email exchanges. I conveyed to Mr. Garagos that Ferrara was available to testify if needed, but Mr. Garagos never asked me to have him travel to San Mateo County so he could testify. Way to go, Mark Garagos, right? Based on my statements of these witnesses and the receipts Scott provided, it was obvious he was at the Berkeley Marina on December 24th, 2002. And based on my interview with Yuri and the proximity of Mr. Clinton's boat to the launch ramp, I concluded that there was nothing large, like a body, inside of Scott's boat that day. As shown in the photograph below, which depicts the launch ramp in the location of Mr. Clinton's boat circled in red, Scott had to drive his boat right past Nick Clinton's boat, and Yuri stated that he was standing in the cockpit of Mr. Clinton's boat, which was an elevated position, meaning he had good visibility looking down into Scott's boat. He came in on the left side right here. In addition to looking for witnesses who may have seen Scott at Berkeley Marina, I was asked to assist in the search for Lacey. I created a missing persons flyer with Lacey's photo on it and my phone number. A copy of the flyer I created is attached as Exhibit G. The Petersons paid me directly for my services on occasion. A copy of the checks I received is below. Jackie Peterson actually wrote that one. Scott's mother for payment for services investigating what happened to Lacey. They dated March 17, 2003 is attached as Exhibit H. On January 8th, I received a fax from Kirk McAllister, his office, stating that Homer and Helen Maldonado had visited his office to report that they had seen a woman walking a dog on the corner of Covina and Miller Avenues on December 24, 2002 at around 10 a.m. The message also said that Mr. and Mrs. Maldonado had already given this information to MPD at the command post that had been set up in the park. On January 10, 2003, I interviewed them. They related that on the morning of December 24th at approximately 9:50 to 10 a.m., they observed someone fitting the description of Lacey Peterson, a pregnant woman with dark hair walking a golden retriever, walking near the intersection of Miller and Covina Avenue. Homer stated that he called the Modesto Police Department on January 1st, 2003 to report what he had seen and was told a detective would contact him. This was after telling them in the park, I believe. Mr. Maldonado stated that he also reported what he had seen to the police chaplain, but no one from MPD ever followed up on his report. Homer further stated that immediately preceding Lacey, seeing Lacey, he had been at the gas station on Miller Avenue and saw a tan-colored van there. He described the man associated with the van as a white male in his late 40s or early 50s, about 150 to 150 pounds, and grubby looking. On May 16, 2003, this was after the arrest of Scott Peterson, Homer recontacted my office indicating that he had further information to share. After viewing those photos of Stephen Todd and Glenn Pierce in the paper that were published by the Modesto Bee, he recognized Todd as the driver of the van, of the tan van he had seen at the gas station. He further recalled a second person being associated with the van as having asked the driver if he got the cigs when the driver returned to the vehicle. Homer Maldonado expressed concern that the police did not believe the information he was relating to them. He indicated that he had spoken to Vivian Mitchell, who also reported to the police that she saw Lacey walking her dog on that morning. And she expressed a similar concern, telling Mr. Maldonado that the police had tried to convince her that the woman she saw was a blonde and not a brunette like Lacey. Oh my God, these people are so savage. This is crazy. Right? Crazy. Based on the information Mr. and Mrs. Maldonado provided to me on January 10th, I conducted a door-to-door canvass of residents of Covina Avenue near Miller Avenue. In doing so, I made contact with Martha, who was visiting. Martha, Miss Aguilar, stated that she lived 2 doors down. Miss Aguilar told me that she and her husband, Frank, were driving down Loloma Avenue heading west on December 24th, 2002, around 10:30 or 10:45, and she saw a pregnant woman matching the description of Lacey Peterson walking Golden Retriever on Loloma Avenue about 1 block east of Loloma Park. She stated that she has seen photographs of Lacey Peterson and is certain that was who she saw. She further stated that she recognized Miss Peterson because she had seen her on a prior occasion at Gold Medical Center. She also recalled seeing a flower tattoo on Miss Peterson's ankle, which Scott confirmed to me was a tattoo his wife had. A copy of my memorandum documenting my interview with this person is attached as Exhibit J. You guys, this is absolutely crazy, right? Crazy, right? You know, here we got on January 20th, Tony. Tony was a route driver, okay, for bread. And he was servicing restaurants. Mr. Freitas stated that on December 24th, he was at Perco's restaurant on Yosemite Boulevard making a delivery. And from there, he drove down Yosemite and turned northwest onto Loloma Avenue. Mr. Freitas said that he drove down Loloma. He saw Lacey Peterson, whom he later recognized from the posters and photographs. He said that he recalled specifically that she was walking a Golden Retriever type dog and that she was obviously pregnant and that she was wearing dark clothing. He believes it was at least 9:45. She said she was walking on the south side of the street, heading west toward town. And that Mr. Freitas said that she was across the street from the triangular-shaped grass park-like area, which is close to the Miller Avenue intersection. A copy of my memorandum documenting my interview is down below. So, boom, this Reverend Vern. So he goes through all these fucking people, right? Vivian, then Grace Wolf. I was informed that the locations of all of these witnesses, Maldonado, Freitas, Wolf, all these people, reporting seeing Lacey walk the dog the morning of December 24th, were consistent with the routes the Petersons would take when walking their dog. The times these witnesses reported seeing Lacey were approximate times, but they were all within the same general time frame, between 9:45 and 10:45 a.m. on December 24th. As a private investigator and former law enforcement officer who has interviewed thousands of witnesses over the course of my career, it was my assessment at that time, and it remains my view today, that the witnesses I interviewed described above who reported seeing Lacey Peterson walking the Peterson's dog on December 24th were credible witnesses who were attempting to provide helpful information in the search for Lacey Peterson. These witnesses provided specific details about her appearance and the time they saw her, to the best of their ability. None of those witnesses were interviewed by the police prior to the arrest of Scott Peterson, to my knowledge. In April 2003, after Scott was arrested, I realized how important all of these eyewitness statements would be to Scott's defense. I was also aware that no one from the law enforcement agency had responded to the efforts these witnesses made to report what they had seen. No one from law enforcement had assessed the credibility of these witnesses or the reliability of their statements prior to arresting Scott. To preserve these eyewitness statements before memories began to fade, I contacted these witnesses and got their permission to video record their statements. The video recorded statements are attached here too on a USB drive as Exhibit O. What the fuck was Mark Garagos doing? Mark Garagos, what are you doing? All of this shit was done for you, handed to you on a fucking silver platter. But maybe Mark's over here like, none of this is needed, blah, blah, blah. But what are you talking about? The jury needed to hear all of this. Like, what is going on, right? Wild. After Scott was arrested, I immediately assisted with the review of the police reports that were provided to the defense. I'm going through the discovery, basically, is what he's saying. I came across a report by a witness named Leora Garcia and interviewed her on August 29th, 2003. She stated that on December 24th, she was working as a driving instructor. And she recalled that during a lesson she had that began at 10 a.m. that morning, she saw an older reddish orange dog with white around its face walking alone with a reddish leash attached near the intersection of Encina and Edgebrook Avenues. Wait till you guys see where that's actually located. The dog fit the description of the Peterson's dog and his leash. She stated that the dog looked like it knew where it was going. Miss Garcia also stated that she saw an older, light-colored van parked along the curb by La Loma Park. It appeared to her that there had been some kind of a scuffle. The door to the van was shut in a hurry. She saw some quilted material get caught in the door, and the van squealed its tires and quickly pulled away, running through the stop sign and turning right towards downtown. She said it gave her a bad feeling, so she made a comment to the driving student to take down the license plate number. Are you fucking kidding me? She recalled faded Texas plates with NGH4 included in the number. The van had solid sides, no windows, and she saw paint chipping. The rear windows were tinted or mirrored. She stated that she thought it was a Chevy. Miss Garcia informed me that she told her family what she saw and watched the news that night to see if anything happened in the area. When she saw that Lacey was missing, she wanted to call the police, but her husband told her not to because the description she had wasn't very good. Later, her friends told her to call the police, so she called the Modesto Police Department a week or two later. Miss Garcia was told an officer would come to interview her, but no one from the police department had interviewed her as of August 29, 2003. Miss Garcia provided me with a copy of the page from her work calendar, which reflects that she had an appointment at 10 a.m. with a student driver, as she stated. A copy of my interview memorandum with Garcia and the page she provided from her calendar for December 24, 2002 are attached here to as Exhibit P. I also videotaped my interview with her. Here you go. Based on my decades-long career as an investigator who has considerable experience interviewing witnesses and assessing credibility, it is my opinion that this witness addressed above were credible and reliable witnesses. They appeared to me to be sincere in their desire to provide helpful information to me, the police, and anyone else who was participating in the search for finding Lacey Peterson. Medina burglary. Throughout my investigation, many witnesses I interviewed expressed concern that the Modesto Police Department was not interested in investigating leads that didn't support their theory of Scott's guilt. That was the case as noted above, with witnesses who reported seeing Lacey alive on December 24th, such as Homer, Martha, Tony, Vivian, Grace. Well, here we go. On January 7th, 2003, I contacted Susan Medina to interview her about the burglary of her home. She stated to me that the police informed her the burglars were in her home for 3 hours and that the burglary occurred on December 26th. You guys, how would the cops know if the burglary, how long the burglary was? Were they doing it? Oh my God. This is crazy. This is insanity. The cops, yep, they were there for 3 hours. Wait, it gets better. It gets way better. Miss Medina stated that she felt the police dismissed the burglars as the suspects in Peterson's disappearance too quickly. A copy of my interview, it's attached. On January 10th, 2003, I contacted Robert Nickerson. And now this, you guys wait, because I'm going to show you my timeline. Robert Nickerson has a big part to do with my timeline. Ready? And I'll tell you why. On January 10th, 2003, I contacted Robert Nickerson, who was at the Medina's home the morning of December 24th, 2002, inspecting a project in their backyard. As he was leaving around 9:20, okay, he stated that he was not certain, but there was possibility of a white Ford van parked in front of his vehicle because he parked on the street that he had to drive around. The van had 2 back doors. The paint was chipping around the window, and he could see gray primer. Are you sure it wasn't orange? Okay. He said the van had a crude rack on top with wooden cross supports. It's like, oh, wait, hold on. Mr. Nickerson also stated that he saw a man riding by on his bike heading north on Cavana Park, toward the park. He described that man as a white male in his 40s with tan sweats and windbreaker and a 10-speed. A copy of my interview memorandum, blah, 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 is attached. Well, they go into more depth with his interview, you guys. He says that when he's like, when I left their house, I'm like, how do you know it was 9:20? It could have been 10:20. Because check this out. In his statement, he said when he's like, I know the Petersons because I'm the one that went and basically you have to get your permits to get your pools and stuff and whatever home improvements. This dude went and knows them because he went to their house when they got their in-ground pool put in, which was in 2001. He says that when he was leaving, that both cars were gone out of that driveway. Both cars were gone out of the driveway. Wait for Lana's moments here, but I was like, and the guy was like, are you sure? Both cars? He's like, yes, both cars were gone. Remember, Lacey was supposed to go to the store. Okay. And everybody just always assumed that the order that Lacey did, the stuff that she did was, I was going to walk the dog first and, and then I was going to go to the store. Well, also she had to do like the mopping, right? Well, who would ever mop before they did the cooking? Okay, you'd want to do the cooking and make whatever, right, before you mopped the floor. Why would you ever do it in the reverse order? Right, guys? Come on. I'm going to do my cooking and then I'm going to clean up afterwards. I'm not going to mop and then cook. Sorry. Also, the mop had all the mop was still there. The water was also there. So we're going to come back to that because I think all this does is just push everything back in terms of, did Lacey drive to the store really quick, grab what she needed, came back, then took the dog? Just saying. On January 16, 2002, I contacted Diane Jackson, who reported that on December 24th, 2002 at 11:40 a.m., she saw a tan beige van parked on the street in front of the Medina's home and 3 short, dark-skinned males standing near the van. Miss Jackson stated that she reported what she had seen to the police, and the Modesto Police Department had scheduled her for hypnosis. Come on, man. So she was interviewed. We already know about her interview. On May 19th, now after his arrest, I contacted Superior Court Judge Ricardo Cordova, who lived around the corner from the Petersons. He said that on December 23rd, 2002, at approximately 10:15, someone was knocking on his door. He was already in bed. And by the time he got to the door, he saw a man walking across his lawn. He went outside to confront the man, who described as a late 30s, 5'10", 170-pound piece of shit, blonde hair punk. That man asked for money. Judge Cordova stated that he sent the man away and felt the man was casing his home and possibly the neighborhood. Judge Cordova stated that another neighbor, Albert, whatever, told him that the same guy who was casing Judge Cordova's home came to his home, and said he was looking for his dog. You guys, the jury didn't hear any of this shit. This is crazy. This is crazy that a jury wouldn't hear any of this shit. Now, Judge Cordova stated that early on December 25th, he spoke to Detective Sebron Banks of the Modesto Police Department, whom he knew from prior cases he had worked on, and explained the events that occurred the night of December 23rd. Detective Banks did not take any notes or write down Judge Cordova's statements. When Judge Cordova pointed out a pair of women's sandals with flower pattern he noticed lying along the road 3 houses away from the Petersons' home, Detective Banks showed no interest in the sandals and walked on. The next day, on December 26th, Judge Cordova saw Detective Riddenauer and repeated what he had told Detective Banks. Detective Riddenauer told Judge Cordova to speak to a sergeant, which he did. The following day, MPD Detective Reed went to Judge Cordova's home, and he again recounted what had happened with the man casing his home. I want to know if Detective Reed is any relation to Greg Reed, the neighbor that's really good friends with the Petersons. I'm interested in that now. That's very interesting. Judge Cordova stated that it was obvious there was no communication between the officers because Detective Reed had no information about his prior reports, or you just don't realize what's going on, buddy. Judge Cordova stated that he had met with the Petersons at a community meeting regarding issues in the neighborhood, and he recalled Scott and Lacey saying that when they took walks in the park and encountered homeless or transient people camping out, they would approach them and tell them to leave. Judge Cordova said he thought this to be a bit bold and potentially dangerous. He was concerned to think that Lacey might be bold enough to confront someone like this on her own. A copy of my interview memorandum with Judge Cordova is attached here too as Exhibit T. This is sick. On May 27, 2003, I contacted Patty, who lived 1 block over from the Petersons. She stated that the early morning of December 25th at about 6:30 a.m., a brown van stalled in front of her home, and a woman got out of the van and came to Miss Ringler's door and asked if she could have some gas money. Miss Ringler said that the woman reminded her of drug people. I think it could potentially have been Dina Renfro. She stated that her husband gave the woman some gas so they could drive on. In my written notes, I wrote that Miss Ringler commented that it was foggy that morning, but that was not included in my typewritten report. A copy of my interview memorandum with Miss Ringler is attached. You know, fog, messing up. Yeah. On June 14, 2003, I contacted Kathy Albert, who worked at the gas station where Homer, reported seeing the 2 men in a van, one of whom Mr. Maldonado identified as possibly Stephen Todd, who confessed to committing the Medina burglary. Miss Albert stated that she observed a tan or cream-colored van hanging out in the parking lot. 2 males, scruffy. Based on my experience as an investigator, so all this shit, like, dude, this is just, what the fuck are they doing? Now, Detective Broccini targeted Scott from day one. On January 16, 2003, I contacted Brian Ulrich, who stated that he was a good friend of Scott and Lacey Peterson. Mr. Ulrich stated that he was concerned that the detectives investigating Lacey's disappearance were intentionally lying to witnesses, including himself and others of the Petersons' friends, to turn them against Scott. One of the friends went up to him and said this to him. Mr. Ulrich stated that one detective told him they suspected Scott because he had refused to let the police into his home the night Lacey was discovered to be missing. Mr. Ulrich stated that he knew that was a lie because he was present at the Petersons' home that night, and he witnessed Scott invite the police into his home, and he observed the police going into the Petersons' home. Mr. Ulrich also stated that the friends of Scott's who he had spoken to, were all convinced that Scott had nothing to do with Lacey's disappearance, but that after the detectives called them and spoke to them, they started to question whether Scott may have had anything to do with it or had something to do with it. A copy is here. You guys, this is sick. On October 21st, 2003, I contacted Greg Reed, who stated that he never saw anything that caused him to question Scott and Lacey's relationship. He never knew Scott who loses temper, and that when Scott left him a message at about 6 p.m. saying that Lacey was missing, his voice was cracking. Mr. Reed stated that he was present at the Petersons' home the night of December 24th, and at around 11 p.m., he heard one of the officers on scene make a comment that caused Mr. Reed to believe the police thought Scott had done something to Lacey. Mr. Reed told me that he then got into the car with his wife and said to her, they think he, Scott, did it. Mr. Reed stated that he did not think the police were doing a very good job because It appeared they were not communicating with one another about what was happening in the investigation. A copy of my interview. Here it is. On November 10th, 2003, I contacted Aaron Fritz, who stated that he was a good friend of Scott Peterson and had known him for 16 years. Detective Broccini was focused on him because when Broccini gets his mind set on something, he will make sure he finds it. Mr. Fritz also stated that Broccini told him early on in the case, I'm going to get this guy, referring to Scott. Mr. Fritz stated that there must be something definitely wrong when another member of the police department is apologizing for Broccini's behavior. A copy, so I don't know if he's a cop. It was my view when this case was being investigated by the Modesto Police Department, and it remains my view today, that the police immediately determined that Scott was guilty. I provided Mr. Peterson's attorneys with all the witness interviews. Prior to Scott's arrest in April of 2003, I had no knowledge, you guys, no knowledge that this watch had been pawned at the pawn shop. Here's the boom. By a woman named Dina Renfro. Remember in what I just read to you guys back in the last episode when Dina's over here talking about, oh yeah, it was the Lacey Peterson detectives that came over and that's who was asking me questions about this shit. No, bitch, you're high as a kite. Okay, we get it. You might be a great person now. Just come out and tell the fucking truth. I want to know who gave Dina Renfro the fucking watch. Okay, but this is this guy having to say in this declaration, I never talked to no Dina Renfro. I didn't even know that watch. We had no idea about the watch because they hid everything to do about the watch from us. Just like they hid everything to do about the fucking van from us. Okay. So here he puts in his declaration. Prior to Scott's arrest in April of 2003, I had no knowledge that a Crichton watch had been pawned at the pawn shop by a woman named Deanna Renfro on December 31st, 2002. I did not conduct any interviews with Deanna Renfro or James Breuer prior to Scott's arrest or at any other time. I have reviewed this declaration in its entirety and its accuracy. Yeah, take that. Now these are these exhibits. Exhibit A. So this is what they, all the things that he attached, like his interviews. These are the notes. And then you can actually have the recordings if you want. But here's Exhibit A, which was all of the notes here of the first interview. Then B is that he showed him, well, this is David Johnson. Then I want to go to the pictures that he showed. Okay, here. Look at this guy look at this fax on over. It's like 4 pages including this cover sheet. Gary, names of people and public launch ramp. Also a copy of these people's likely foot traffic patterns around. Like, look at this shit. Look at these people. Look at this. He had all of this done. All of these fucking people at that boat. And then he provided this. Like, get out of here. And here's Mark Garagos doing God knows what the fuck. Okay. But these are the police, okay? This is when the police were telling people that we can't corroborate that he was even at the marina. What? We can't even corroborate he was at the marina. So the question needs to be asked, the question has to start coming up now. Why would the cops cover for meth heads? Like, if the meth heads had something to do with Lacey's disappearance, okay? Or you have to ask yourself, or does it have way more to do with something else than these are just like meth heads that were there? Would it reveal more things? Would it reveal more of what was truly going on in that area? I mean, you're really going to cover this up and blame it on Scott just to say that Modesto isn't like a trashy area. And hey, you can don't be afraid to move in here. We don't steal pregnant women and hold them, torture them, and then murder them. Now, all of these vans and these homes that are getting raided, they all have black electrical tape in them. Pictures that were taken when they recovered Lacey and Connor. Connor, over his ear, he had what there's like a picture of it, and it's it's black electrical. It looks like black electrical tape. It's not seaweed, and it's consistent with being like black electrical tape, and it would also be consistent with if that was there, then that means that human hands would have put it there. That's going to be coming out. And guess what? The coroner, when she was asked about things, and the medical examiner, she's like, "Where'd you get those pictures? That nobody ever gave me those. I've never seen those before." Yeah, all this Target bag and all these guys, they're trying to make it seem like these people are like tweaker meth dudes. These are all people that were doing drugs, but they were also part of like these biker gangs. So I did my own research and I started looking into some of these people. And first of all, it's so hard. Like all these people are having sex with multiple people and having babies with them. So like you have brothers and sisters and all of them have different last names. Not everybody, but a lot of them. Let me grab some of my stuff here. So let's see. He would have been 60. Well, minus 16, minus 14. He'd been like 59. I want to show you guys a picture. Tell me what you think. Okay. Late yesterday afternoon, a federal jury found Christopher Brian Ablett, aka Stoney, a member of the Modesto chapter of the Mongols outlaw motorcycle gang, guilty of all 4 felonies with which he was charged, including murder in aid of racketeering, assault with a deadly weapon in aid of racketeering, using a firearm during a crime of violence, and using a firearm causing murder during a crime of violence. U.S. Attorney Melinda Hagg announced the charges stemmed from the defendant's gang-related murder of Mark, in quotes, Papa Gordito, the president of the San Francisco chapter of the Hells Angels, on September 2nd, 2008, at 24th Street and Treat Avenue in the Mission District of San Francisco. Evidence at trial showed that Ablett traveled to San Francisco to visit a friend. He was armed with a foot-long military knife and a 357 Magnum revolver. Ablett brought with him a Mongols full patch vest and t-shirt that only a full member of the Mongols is allowed to wear. According to testimony from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives gang expert specialist John Chicino and former Mongols undercover ATF special agent Darren Kozlowski, who infiltrated the gang, the Mongols are an organized criminal motorcycle gang whose primary rival is the Hells Angels motorcycle gang. When word traveled to Papa, Gordino, that the defendant was wearing a Mongols patch shirt in a bar in the Mission, like it's like coming into our territory. Okay. He, the president, this Mark guy, went to the street outside the bar and approached Ablett. A fight broke out during which Ablett stabbed this dude 4 times and shot him twice, killing him. According to the testimony of FBI Special Agent Jacob Millsbog, the case agent, the defendant's phone records showed that he spent the next several hours calling people who were identified as members of the Mongols, showing that he was reaching out as a part of the Mongols' communication network. The jury rejected the defendant's defenses of self-defense, defense of his friends, and heat of passion after the defendant took the stand and testified. The jury also found the defendant murdered this dude to maintain or increase his position in the Mongols gang, and that the Mongols engaged in racketeering activity. Now, Mongols, whatever, who gives a shit? But, ready for this? This guy's from Modesto that went up to San Francisco and did this. So I then was like, let's take a look at something. I'm going to put it up on my screen over here. Mongolos, is that it? Mongolos. Lucy, is that better? Check this out. So I was like, well, why can't nobody find this Todd Stephen guy anymore? You know, come on, Modesto. Like, where you at, brother? What you doing? What you doing? So this is what he looked like back then. Okay, that's him. I was building something here. So do you see this picture? Did it pop up on for you guys? Okay, good. Okay, now that's his mugshot in 2003. Okay, now check this out. Okay. I went on Facebook and I was looking. Okay. And this is Stephen Todd. He's lives in, from Modesto, and this is right next door, Ceres, California. Okay. But he has 2 Facebook profiles. If this is him, don't know if it is, but I thought what was interesting, okay, is that the back of this one that says Stephen Todd right here, it has this, if you zoom in on the picture here, this is none other than, it's like, hey, I'm just letting everybody know what I'm affiliated with. Okay. Now on his second, where's that? Like, what are the odds, right? What are the odds that a guy is going to have this? His name's Stephen Todd, right? Then I said, well, what are the odds that a guy would make a Facebook page and have his name as Stephen Dodd, D-O-D-D, okay, from Modesto, same thing. And this is him now. Again, I have no idea if this person is the same person because I was trying to compare what he would have looked like back. Anyways, want to know your guys' take. Let me zoom in. All these years later. But so did some more digging. This van, Okay. This van is supposedly having like the Renfros of the world. Okay. Mongols. I believe it's Mongols. I believe. I believe it's Mongols. But here, see those. So that van, right? Then now here's this. Here's this David Machado guy. Okay, David Machado that killed the officer in 2016 has the same name as the David that was living with Renfro, right? Okay, let me just back out. Okay. So he's supposed to be living with Renfro, and he had a girlfriend at the time named Sydney Hyde. Found her. Now, if this is the same people, if this David is the David that was also living with Renfro at that Curtis house, but here's the Sydney Hyde. Okay. Here's the Curtis guy that had the house where all these people just like ransacked and came in, right? So here's Curtis. He's like, I'm the owner of this 4-bedroom house. Okay. And here's Donald Glenn Pierce. His, what do you call it? His obituary and his little motorcycle. Okay. We're not talking about just these little meth tweakers. Okay. That's not what we're talking about here. I do my research. And the only swearing gin that I could find and had some ties back to stuff is right here. It's organized as fuck. It's exactly right. This isn't Tweakville. Okay. Is remember I told you I said go check and see if you can find a Shane that got into a car, Shane Swearingen, that got into a car wreck due to a police chase, okay? Go see if you can find a Shane Swearingen and a Danielle Harbin who were in a police chase and that they got into a car accident and that this Shane dude died. Can't find it. Then, you know that Joanne Balch? Well, what I found is I found a Joanne Balch. I can't find a Joanne anywhere. Okay. But all of these people are obsessed with their traveling classic cars company. Curtis said that he was kicking it with a Joanne Balch. Again, they like to spell the names wrong on purpose, but this is who I found. And then I was able to find that Sydney Hyde, okay, who was supposedly dating that David Machado on the friends list of Facebook, she is friends with the 10 Brink boys. 10 Brink being Adam and Sean and what they knew. And so I'm creating one fuck of a whiteboard. It's almost done. This is just a picture of my whiteboard that's huge in my house right now of the Medina burglary. And here you go. And so what I want to point out is They never gave a shit about Lacey's car, and they never gave a shit about Lacey's phone. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. Hold on. I'm going to get a better version of this, but this is what I'm working on right now. I just want to show you guys something that I'm working on is the Medinas left their house. Okay, first of all, the girl Karen neighbor, she puts the dog back inside the gate at 10:18. She says that's what she was able to narrow down. Now, the Medinas left for LA for Christmas. They can say 10:33 because that's when they called their son to say we're on our way. Okay. And then the mailman, he goes by the house at 10:50, and always he would get a regardless of where the dog was, it would always bark when the mailman was coming there. He's like, listen, the dog, there was no barking. Okay, there was no barking. And the gate was wide open. Okay. And so what you're able to say here then is that at 10:50, when the mailman is saying, the dog would have barked if the dog's back there. Because everybody's always been under this assumption, and what they try to push is that that this window is so small to commit this burglary. The fuck it ain't. Not if you break it down the right way that you'd want to explain it, which is at 10:18 when the dog was placed back. It does not mean that Lacey's still there, because if you listen to the interviews, what they say and what they were going to be testifying to is that Karen on numerous occasions had gotten the dog when the dog would get out and would put the dog back in and just shut the door. Okay. And that would be it. Like, she didn't go in and like hunting around for Lacey or Scott or anything like that. Okay. The telling part is that at 10:50, after that, when the mailman comes, okay, and there is no barking and the door was closed, that means that Lacey and the dog, right, have then left together. But prior to that, what I want people to start thinking about is, remember when the guy that was at the house, Richard, whatever his name is, and he was looking at the property at the Medinas, and he says that he leaves, and then when he left, he's like, yeah, no, I walked around, I know the Petersons, neither car was there. Check it out. He thinks that he left around 9:20, and I'm saying it's a little 9:20 time. The Medina said that they left shortly after he left. I think he's wrong, okay, about what time he left. And I think Lacey, okay, she actually went to the store first and drove the car, because, and I would use this if I was the defense in showing that this guy is saying that both cars were gone. That's huge. Okay. How could both cars be gone? Right. So if Lacey, left, because they didn't even go into Lacey's car. They didn't do shit. But if Lacey left to go to the store, okay, that was what she was going to do first, and she realizes that the dog gets out, okay, so you're about to leave to go to the store because the dog's going to get out, then this guy, so you got to go try, if you're ever going to go chase a dog, you guys, how do you chase a dog? You get in your car and you go to try to chase down the dog, right? Right? Wrong? So is there a chance that could have happened? So then when she gets back to the house, after she tries to go get the dog, whatever, she's trying to chase after the dog. But I'd be using the guy leaving the Medinas after he's like a contractor for the city to approve of the construction that they were doing at the house. He says when he left, he had to go around some van, and the Petersons, neither car was there. Absolutely. Anyways, that's an option. that's an option that I don't know if it's been explored enough. That's why he saw that neither car was there. Okay, but regardless, you have a homie. It's the mailman at 10:50 dropping off the mail. No dog is barking. Okay, and you have then, I believe, this window up until 2:15, because Scott calls twice, meaning he calls her cell phone and he calls her their home phone and leaves a message at 2:15 when he's leaving the marina, and she doesn't answer. I can't believe that the police wouldn't be interested in knowing, okay, if Lacey made any calls from her cell phone. Like, they weren't interested in that at all. And I'm thinking to myself, why aren't you interested in any of this shit? To see if she made any phone calls, to see if she had gotten in her phone or, gotten in her car at least at one point, drove somewhere, made a call at that time. For them not to have any, like, that's when like phones were starting to become so hot with like, oh yeah, like they had no interest of getting into Lacey's phone. No interest of even getting in her car. And that's telling to me, because what they did this whole investigation is they ran from anything that could actually have potential value the opposite way of Scott Peterson. So why don't we start talking about Lacey's car, and why don't we start talking about the interest that they were not interested in her phone whatsoever. So the Medina's house was in perfect working order, Susanna said. Susanna Medina. And then all of these people fled to Oklahoma. When all of this was said and done, these people fled to Oklahoma. This is the person that cleans the house. Navarra, or whatever her name is, Nevea or something like that. Nava. Ready? Whose houses does she clean besides the Petersons? Ready for this? Whose house does she clean besides? This was inside knowledge. If you want inside knowledge, you will go to gardeners. You will go to people that clean people's houses to find out people's schedules, like when people are going out of town. If you want to talk about burglary, right? Somebody back in the day said they saw a guy with darker hair, like scraggly, like down to like his like, here. Well, this guy that, stabbed up this guy right here was the Hells Angels. Well, he stabbed the Hells Angels leader. He had that longer hair that he wore like here. But whoopsies. Who the Medinas use as a landscaper, and I think that they said that there was a regular gardener in the area, but they didn't use that person. But then, ready? Where's Matter? Oh, this is a good angle. I want to show you guys this angle that I think if I blow it up bigger, you could see it. This angle, do you see how there's one street that's coming over here to the right, and there's one over here to the left? This is this weird angle here, and this is this area where people were saying that they saw like the van speeding off. Like it's like, and this is how she would walk. She would like come down this one street and then like loop up to go back the other way. And that's where a couple of these sightings were. Now I want to go back to this guy Where is he? There he is. Noel Terry Borden. Born and raised in Kokomo, Indiana. Can you believe it? More importantly, guess what he does? He builds and puts pools in. They do a ton of shit. Like him and his, like whatever he ran, like this rigging, this trucking, jack of all trades over here. This guy, Noel Terry Borden. It was his van. Okay, now minus when he passed away here in 2016, this is what he looked like. I have a picture, though, I want to show you of what he looked like potentially at the time that Lacey would have been abducted. Like how, like, I think he would have been, I want to say he died in 2016. He was 73. Lacey was abducted in basically 2002, but it was right at the end, so let's just say 03. So 13 years before 2016, which puts him at, I would say, 60. So here, I'm going to show you what homie looked like before. Noel Terry. Now remember, his van was, he's like, in his interview said, yeah, it was like an inside job. I don't know. What the hell does that mean? That your van being lit on fire was an inside job? What are you talking about? But nothing happened. Nothing, Noel Terry Borden. That doesn't even make any sense to me. Okay, here he is. This pic right here. Ah! Oh man, I'm gonna have to really zoom in on that. Fuck. I'm trying to get it in color. It doesn't do it justice. Go to his obituary. You're gonna see it. He's standing next to this train thing. Anyways, he looks like a scraggly motherfucker. You know, looks like a scraggly dude. Anyways, this was him growing up, though. Really good looking dude growing up. Well, go to his obituary. You'll see him. Anyways, that's going to round it out. This was to make up for the episode 6 for the haters out there. So Scott Peterson, 100%. He was presumed guilty. Motherfucker's innocent as balls. I got a lot of shit over here. Going through old stuff. Scott Peterson was doing internet searches of how to put his freaking whatever he ordered on the internet together. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. One was at 10:32. One was at 10:53. I'm finishing all this up. And we're going to start figuring out what cops are complete trash. All right, guys. So, yep, episode 6, they tried to come after. So this is hopefully to make up for that. You guys rock. Plenty more. We're going to start getting into a little bit more of what happened at the trial and the lies about the trial, like what the media, for whatever reason, wanted to put out there that they knew if they were there that wasn't true. So you have the media has culpability here. So how many of them classic cars did Jamie get caught with? 200. Well, we can get into all of that classic car stuff too. Oh wait, that's the one I wanted to highlight. But the media is 100% culpable here. They sat in that courtroom and they watched this all. And everything that they were reporting to us is all fucking shit. Okay? This is why these trials have to be broadcast. You can't even trust the media anymore. Okay? They're supposed to be the ones that are making sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. Now all mainstream media is doing is pushing narratives for money. Period. Lana, how long was Lacey alive for? According to the new data, at least to the 28th, they're saying, and as long as like January 5th. But the timeline I'm working with, it was very strategic when they put out to the world. In the Modesto Bee put it out, Scott's full alibi, that it wasn't just that he was fishing. It went from just he was fishing, then he was like, out in the water. Then it was, okay, he's at Berkeley Marina. And the whole Berkeley Marina date, when that came out, it was like, if you start thinking about it, if that never comes out in the whole mess of everything that we're talking about here, where would they have put Lacey? Where would Lacey have really been found? So, all right, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you guys so much. Share it, subscribe, like. We got to get the truth out. This has to stop. Mainstream media is not going to put the truth out. Okay. And when I found out that the FBI and ATF are trying to infiltrate the gangs, I'm telling you, if it was a turf war and it was like, we're not going to ruin what I've been working on so I could take all this shit down, then Lacey would be collateral damage at that point. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to talk about. But on the next one, see you soon. Special shout out to Mike from ABC. Great job. Great work.